All right, founders, welcome back. We are here for part two of building confidence and capacity for social enterprises. And we're here with our Nail the Numbers Pro and guest, Gordon Holly, who is the co-founder president of Humanity Financial, Vancouver-based accounting firm that is working with social enterprises across the country. Welcome back, Gordon.
Thanks, Tanya. Thrilled to be here.
So we are now going to talk about operating expenses. We've got top line out of the way, and hopefully everybody that is listening is getting down to work on trying to figure out where they can create their own source of revenue. But as we know, I was going to say it's all about bottom line. It is not all about bottom line in this conversation. But we do need to talk about operating expenses, because operating expenses is a big part of business and our overall health. My experience with social enterprise is that, well, actually, no, this is my truth. My experience with most business owners is that they have not budgeted for all the true operating expenses, which is why their bottom line gets compromised. But tell me what you tend to see when it comes to social enterprises and their operating expenses, and maybe more specifically over the course of last year with COVID. What have you been seeing?
Yeah, I think, well, certainly with charities and nonprofits, we've been seeing a lot of funders remove restrictions from their funding. Historically, a lot of funders have restrictions. You know, you can only spend, 10% or 15% of our funding on overhead and administrative costs. And I think with COVID, the funders have realized that organizations really did need to pivot. They needed to think about how they were going to change their business model to serve people digitally and online rather than in person. And so the funders have really stepped up, I think, in many respects, and removed many of the restrictions on the use of their funding. So that's been a great direction. I mean, frankly, we were hoping it would go that way in any event, but COVID does seem to have moved that along. And funders really have stepped up and allowed organizations the flexibility to invest where they need to in order to pivot, be innovative, and hopefully ensure their future sustainability.
Well, that's good news. That's a bonus in this. And so what, when it comes to team and personnel, I know oftentimes these service-based organizations are usually operating at a bare minimum, counting on many volunteers. Have you witnessed them becoming more efficient in this area, or ramping up? What changes have you seen from a team of personnel perspective?
Yeah, great question. I think we're still trying to figure out what the sort of wise practice operating structure will be in the future. And this is typically our largest costs for most organizations were always payroll and facilities. And now we're seeing some discussions about those shifting potentially significantly. Some organizations have actually closed down their offices and have moved to entirely virtual service providers. Other organizations are mandating their people come back to work when and if it's safe, and they're holding on to their office space. Other organizations are becoming much more flexible, giving employees flexibility. Do they want to work from home? Do they want to work from the office? Do they want to work partly at home, partly at the office? So anyway, I think we're still trying to figure out how that's going to end up. But it does seem that most organizations are becoming significantly more flexible around the office space and working at home. Having said that, I think I'm not sure we've figured out yet how to maintain really high levels of employee engagement. How do we train our people? How do we keep them engaged when they're working from home? How are they still part of the team? How do we build trust? And how do we reward our employees when they're working at home? Historically, many organizations, took people out for lunch or took people out for dinner or had parties at the office, it's really hard to do in a virtual environment if people are working from home. So, I think we're seeing employment benefits. People are rethinking employment benefits. What are relevant now that people are working from home? What kind of technology should we be providing our employees? There's all kinds of questions. And I think this goes back to that sort of innovative, out of the box thinking. Organizations are really having to think about their business model and how they're going to structure themselves well for future success. Not only as we were talking about earlier, the combining the purpose with the profit, but also thinking about how they're going to engage and train and attract and retain all-star employees going forward.
So smart. So lots of efficiencies and lots of other alternatives to compensation, like, as you were mentioning, the benefits, the pension plans, all those things that you can put into the operating expenses to take care of people and not necessarily have to have that reflected in their hourly wage or annual salary. On that note, though, I'm curious. I'm just going to throw you a curveball on this. Have you ever come across a compensation model that actually, and I don't want to say fair compensation, but I have noticed that with many of these socially driven, purpose-based organizations, the compensation for employees tends to be on the lower side. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to get into the exact numbers there, but have you come across a compensation model that provides fair market salaries for many of their employees, while still holding them accountable to deliver on that purpose, where there's this really nice marriage between the two?
Absolutely. We're seeing more and more examples of this over time. Again, as businesses start thinking about not only the value they're creating for customers, but also the impact their business has on their employees and team members, and in their communities and in the environment. So as a B Corp, and I just want to mention that we just got B Corp status in May 2020. So that's relatively recent for us. We did start working exclusively with social purpose organizations back in 2014, but we just got our B Corp status more recently. But I've lost where I was going with that.
Compensation?
Oh, yeah. So there was one organization in the US I saw where it was a very successful business, and the business owner actually said he actually implemented a minimum salary of $70,000 a year for anybody that worked in the company. So the discrepancy between the highest earners and the lowest earners significantly reduced. And we're seeing this in other organizations. I know there's a consulting firm that does a lot of the same work that we do down in the US that recently converted from a for-profit corporation to a cooperative. And so basically everybody has the opportunity to share in the fruits of the business and the success of the business. So I think we're seeing a lot more people really thinking about, and this is something that we're actively thinking about. The traditional CPA firm is, the partners make lots of money and all the juniors are paid almost nothing and they work long hours. Now we're moving to models where all of our people are working regular business hours. We don't require a lot of overtime. We're moving to models where our employees are making above market salaries and wages. We're looking at things like employee ownership programs. How can people participate in the success of the company? And we're not alone. I think there's lots of organizations that are thinking about and again, innovatively outside the box, trying to figure out how they can build a business that's good for everybody. All stakeholders, right? Not just for the shareholders.
Yes.
For everybody. All
stakeholders. I think that's a really important distinction. All stakeholders. That includes the clients. It includes the owners. It includes it ripples, right? And it's got long-term impact.
Well, when we start as going through the B Corp process, we had to look at all these. We had to look at our supply chain. Are we actively selecting our supply chain people, all the vendors that we use, to make sure that they're having positive impacts on the environment, on their workers, on their communities? Are we choosing to work with people who are designing businesses as a force for good? And we made some significant changes to our supply chain. But I gotta tell you, it's been so much more fun because we know that all the businesses we're dealing with now as suppliers are doing good things in the world. And it just makes it a lot more fun as a business owner to know that we're supporting those businesses And I think this is part of an accelerating process. As more and more businesses are adopting purpose as a motive, we're really picking up speed and accelerating into that.
Oh, so much in there I want to dig into, but two quick segments in there is that I think that one, it goes back to the team and personnel thing and leadership. So what you're doing, Gordon, it inspires others to follow suit, right? Because they're seeing a model that is actually hitting all of those important buttons. So your leadership, thank you for that. That is like that's got me excited about, the possibilities of what could be. And it sounds like in that story, it's another layer of, dare I say, forced. I mean, hopefully we're all trying to be as accountable as we can be, but forced accountability, right? For every decision that we make in an organization, to check in with that rubric or that matrix of, is it hitting this, yes or no? Then we go and we do it, or we don't do it. It's so smart.
Well, it's been an absolutely fascinating transformation for our company. I mean, I don't profess to have it all figured out yet. We're still feeling our way, but it's so much more, for me, it's so much more fun thinking about all the ways our businesses can have positive impact on all of the stakeholders. It just makes it so much more enjoyable as a business owner to run a business, instead of just having that single profit motive where it's all about me. It's all about me and everybody else be damned. No, this is, how can we use our business to have a positive impact on the communities we serve, on our employees, on our team members, on everybody that our business, like all of our stakeholders. Yeah. It's so much more fun to run a business that way. I would never have even imagined.
I love it. The other reason why I really appreciate the information that you're bringing to light here is that, in my experience with working with, and I am going to, this is a broad brushstroke and I'm aware of that, but in my experience in working with many female-owned businesses, the purpose is oftentimes there, but it typically comes at the cost of their financial security. Right? They don't pay themselves. They don't have the profit, the bottom line security. And so what I love about what you're saying is that everything can be accomplished and everybody can be taken care of, all the stakeholders, including the founder in this process, to go on and to continue to show up powerfully for the stakeholders and for the community. Oh, so powerful, Gordon. Thank you for all of this. Space and operating, you've already talked a little bit about how, I think everybody's aware, our space situation is just, it upside down, right? Overnight. And everybody has really kind of shifted how they're doing business, delivery models, where they're doing business out of. But one thing I want to tap in, actually, so before I do that, is there anything else you've been seeing on the space side before I rush through to talking about reserves?
Well, I just think that, one of the things we've done, for example, is we don't have the level of office space per worker that we used to have. And so we're saving some costs on the facility side. On the other hand, we're spending significantly more on technology and making sure that our team members are set up well to operate out of their homes. So we make sure they've got a good desk and a comfortable chair, and they've got we're providing them with the same computer setup that they would have had in the office. Some companies are still coming around to that. There's still some companies that are requiring their workers to provide their own computers and their own internet access. And so I think we're going to be seeing a shift where companies are going to be maybe saving some money on the rent side, but spending significantly more on making sure that their workers are set up not only comfortably, but also safely, making sure they've got the right ergonomic setup, making sure that they've got whatever they need to make working out of a home office safe, comfortable, and an attractive place to work. So it's going to be interesting to see how these trends all play out. But I'm not sure this is a windfall for businesses because we're required to have less space. I think we're going to be investing more in technology, more in making sure our workers are comfortable and safe, and more in employee engagement, employee training, really investing more and more in our team members and workers, because if we don't, we'll lose our all-star employees.
Yeah, such an important point. You're right. I forgot that, yes, many of the operating expenses are increasing through COVID, right? The space is decreased, but yeah, the security, especially too, that PPE equipment if people are out. So thank you for that. I think if it's okay with you, I'd like to talk about reserve funds, but why don't we put that into part 3 when we start talking about profit and purpose and can they coexist? And are you okay with that if we move that into
Sounds great.
part 3, give everybody a bit of a coffee break here, stretch their legs. So thanks for listening. Everybody, as always, founders, feel free to download all of the tools that are provided down below. We've got the playbook and tip sheet, as well as a cash flow forecast. So if you're looking to see where you're going to end up at the end of 2021, based on what your operating expenses currently look like and your top line revenue, please be sure to get that budget done. You can use the template attached. Thank you for listening for part 2. We'll see you back here for part 3. Bye for now.